Iran nuclear deal. Senator Padilla.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity to participate in this hearing today, which is our, at minimum, annual opportunity to ask questions as we fulfill our obligation to provide accountability over the Department of Justice. So just sort of to level set a little bit for folks in the audience and for folks watching at home, the Department of Justice is supposed to be the nation's guardian of fairness and the rule of law. The power of the Department of Justice is built on public trust and a belief that prosecutions are based on facts and law, not on politics or personal loyalty. And I call that out, Mr. Chairman, because when that breaks down, when the public trust breaks down, then justice itself is at risk. But under this Trump administration and the leadership of Attorney General Bondi, I believe the independence of the Department of Justice has come under attack. The department has been reorganized, it's been realigned, and repurposed in ways that we've never seen before. Important offices have been closed, key programs dismantled, and agents diverted, all without congressional authorization or transparent justification. Now, these are not minor bureaucratic changes. They represent a fundamental shift in the Department of Justice's missions and priorities, its policies, and its practices. Now, for example, career prosecutors have been pressured to change decisions in politically sensitive cases. Ethics oversight has been taken away from independent career professionals and handed to political appointees with little experience in these matters. Internal working groups have been created to revisit investigations involving President Trump and his allies. And together, these steps send a dangerous message that prosecutorial decisions can be driven by political loyalty instead of the law. Now, even more troubling is that the Department of Justice has pulled resources away from organized crime, away from counterterrorism, away from the protection of civil rights, to focus on immigration enforcement. The American people expect a Department of Justice to pursue violent crime, as do I, to pursue corruption and threats to national security, not to serve as an arm of immigration policy, and in so doing, under-resource other critical missions. Now, the Justice Department's credibility depends on the public's faith in justice, and that the justice will be applied equally to every person and not reserved for the powerful or the connected. And that faith must be protected. And so it's in that spirit that this committee has a duty to ensure the department's work remains lawful, remains transparent, and remains true to its highest duty, the fair and impartial administration of justice. Now, that being said, I do want to get into some specific items with Attorney General Bondi here, beginning with the firing of Michelle Beckwith. Michelle Beckwith was a 15-year career prosecutor with the Department of Justice. She prosecuted in her career some of the worst in my home state of California: sex traffickers, transnational terrorists, those who this administration claims to care about and be targeting, prioritizing in taking them off the streets. And it may surprise some to learn that Ms. Beckwith was unceremoniously marched out of her office and fired from her job in July of this year. Why? Not because she failed to do her job, quite the opposite. It was because she had the audacity to remind Border Patrol Chief Gregory Bovino that he was obligated to follow a court order and the Constitution in California. According to reports, she was fired less than 6 hours after she told Bovino he couldn't arrest people without probable cause. 6 hours. So my first question, Attorney General Bondi, is a simple yes-no question. Do you believe that government officials like Gregory Bovino are obligated to follow applicable court orders, whether they agree with them or not, yes or no?
First, Senator Padilla, you have gone on for over 5 minutes, and I wish that you loved your state of California as much as you hate President Trump. We'd be in really good shape then, because violent crime in California is currently 35% higher than the national average. Property crime in California is 18% higher than the national average. That should be something that we should be talking about and working together on, yet we're not. And no, this is important. You're talking about all of my agencies, and I want to let you know what DEA has been doing, and they are working hand in hand with
I
Homeland
appreciate
Security.
that, and I'm going
No,
to be
you
asking
can't go
some
on for
questions
5
for
minutes
the
and
record
criticize
as
my agents
well.
who are out working
asked a simple
without
yes
pay
or no
right
question.
now because you voted
Mr.
to
Chairman.
shut down the government.
Mr.
They're out
Chairman.
there working without pay.
Mr. Chairman, I asked a simple yes or no question. Attorney General Bondi is
DEA,
refusing
4,500
to respond.
kilos
So let
of
me move on to
fentanyl
the
and
next
50 million
topic.
fentanyl pills
Because
off the streets.
while under your watch,
FBI,
prosecutors
23,000
Mr. Chairman,
violent criminals. U.S. Marshals,
Mr. Chairman, order, please.
51,000 fugitives.
I'm not getting an answer to my question. I'm trying to move on to the next question or the next topic. Mr. Chairman, order, please. Thank you. Because under Attorney General Bondi's watch, career prosecutors are being fired for telling agencies to follow the law and uphold the Constitution. Meanwhile, there are instances of allies of the president who seem to be getting let off the hook. I won't reiterate what some of my colleagues have already brought up in terms of the dismissal of the investigation into Tom Homeland and his alleged acceptance of $50,000 as payment by undercover FBI agents posing as business executives looking to secure contracts with a future Trump administration. Because if the reports are true, it's not just the underlying conduct of Mr. Homeland, which would be absolutely unacceptable, but the dismissal of the investigation charges raises concerns about the influence of the White House on the Department of Justice. Again, a simple question, and I'd appreciate a simple and brief answer. Whose decision was it to end this investigation?
I have answered that question multiple times, yet you didn't have the courtesy to be sitting in here for the hearing. I'm not going to answer it again. And I find it interesting that you want order in this proceeding now. Excuse me, Senator.
Then I
You
will
want
ask a
order in this
follow-up question.
proceeding
Mr.
now.
Chairman, order,
You sure
please.
didn't
I
have
will ask a
order when you
follow-up question.
stormed Secretary Noem
Mr. Chairman.
at a press
Mr.
conference in
Chairman, order,
California,
please.
did you?
I will ask a follow-up question. Would you commit to either releasing the tape or at least making it available for members of this committee to review, yes or no?
Senator, you have not been sitting in here this entire hearing. I've answered the question, and I also want to tell you that our ATF agents have seized 25,000 illegal firearms.
So we will try again and move on to a different
In your
topic.
home state, we are prosecuting
Chairman,
illegal
order,
aliens
please.
who have raped
Mr.
and
Chairman,
murdered young
order,
girls.
please. Thank you. So when I haven't been in this hearing, I've been watching from my office, monitoring the entire hearing, just so everybody is aware. But since I'm not getting answers to my questions, I'll try to ask one last subject area. No, again, there's been increasing concerns about the politicized decision-making and the erosion of internal safeguards that protect prosecutorial independence. Before we even get into the integrity and independence of prosecutions, we get into, you have to ask the question about the independence and integrity of investigations themselves. The director of the FBI, Director Patel, was here before us just a few weeks ago. Attorney General Bondi, you are the Attorney General of the United States. Director Patel reports to you. Do you believe he's doing a good job, yes or no?
I believe Director Patel is doing a great job. You know where he is right now, Senator Padilla? Right now, you asked me a question.
Yes,
Director
I know
Patel
where he
right
is,
now
and I know
is
where
in
he's headed
Chicago,
because you said it
Senator
earlier
Durbin,
in the hearing.
fighting to keep
You've said it
Chicago
earlier in the
safe.
hearing, and yes, I have been paying attention.
You know, you want order in
Chairman.
here now, yet you stormed the Director of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. You sure didn't have order that day, did you, Senator?
Attorney General, you are under oath. I did not storm the secretary, the video.
Oh, that was
makes
on
that very
video. That
clear.
video has been released, I believe, very publicly.
Mr. Chairman, recent actions raise serious concerns about Director Patel's judgment and politicization, including lawsuits from former FBI officials alleging retaliatory firings, and his decision to cut off longstanding partnerships with civil rights organizations, and his decision to fire an FBI agent for refusing to engage in a, quote, perp walk of James Comey. And on top of all that, his prematurely claiming that subjects were in custody after the shooting of Charlie Kirk. I take Attorney General Bondi's endorsement today of his work as her support for those actions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
May I respond, Senator Chairman?
Yes.
Under Director Patel, 23,000 violent criminals have been arrested, a 91% increase over last year. More than 1,500 child predators have been arrested. We are making cases in your jurisdiction constantly in California, and I wish you would care about those cases. We have disrupted 1,600 gangs and criminal enterprises, 1,600 gangs within this country, thanks to Director Patel and the great men and women of the FBI.
Senator Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How are you today, Attorney General? It's good to see you.
Have a rough voice. But thanks.
I have to say, I am struck by the degree of the cognitive dissonance that I hear on the other side. It really is. I mean, I'm used to sort of the political debates and arguing in court and all those sorts of things. But to hear the other side of the dais talk about weaponization is truly shocking, given what we know now. And I thought what I might do is just tell a story, and these are 100% facts. Hillary Clinton, concerned about her email scandal, works with a Soros organization to cook up this Russiagate nonsense. They feed it to the intelligence agencies, and they spy, under Barack Obama's presidency, they spy on the political opponent, the Republican, running against Hillary Clinton. He gets elected. They continue the operation, and they launder this intelligence into stuff that was meant to, by the FBI and the CIA, to sideline a presidency of a duly elected president of the United States of America, to sideline him. And that continued. You heard even some people on this committee further that nonsense for 4 years. And then the FBI is involved with pre-bunking the Hunter Biden laptop story because they didn't want him to get elected again. So they pre-bunked the Hunter Biden laptop story. The American people should have been allowed to make their own judgments from that. They weren't, because the FBI called it a Russian hack and leak operation. They were meeting with social media companies every month and every week, telling them that the laptop that they knew, that they had verified in November of 2019, they knew was real and knew was his, said it was Russian disinformation. We've heard that before. And then, after Joe Biden comes in, 3 days in, they start a censorship campaign against the country, anybody who's a conservative. And now we also know that the FBI was weaponized in this Arctic frost investigation that tapped the phones of sitting U.S. senators. And also, the Republican Attorneys General Association, so let's pull in 2 more U.S. senators, Ashley Moody and myself, who were on the executive committee at that time. Charlie Kirk, political organizations they didn't agree with. This is not in the Soviet Union in the 1980s. This is in the United States of America in the last few years. And then, when they thought President Trump was on the run and there's no way people would elect him, and then he announces he's running for president, 3 days later, Jack Smith's appointed to get Trump. Fannie Willis brings charges against President Trump, and the assistant prosecutor meets with the White House counsel's office. Why would that happen? Then you have Alvin Bragg bring his charges. The number 3 person at DOJ goes to work for him to get Trump. All in the United States of America. This continued. And Senator Hawley asked the question, wrote it down, what is happening in this country? And I hope that MSNBC is still broadcasting this, because I'm sure their viewership hasn't heard this story that's gone on for 10 years. The truth is, they never forgave President Trump for coming down the escalator at all. They didn't like him. They didn't like the disruption. And they've spent the better part of a decade not just going after him, but demonizing half the country as fascists and Nazis and threats to democracy. And they have fueled this division and their inability to accept the fact that half of the country isn't deplorables, as Hillary Clinton called it, bitter clingers, as Barack Obama called them, or trash, as Joe Biden called them. That they rose up and they sat in their own jury box and they saw all this stuff play out over a decade and they rejected it. And now you have come in to clean that up, and you are doing a great job in doing that. And let me make this clear. There is a big difference between what happened under the Biden regime and the weaponization and then holding those people accountable. That is not weaponization. If that doesn't happen, this will happen all over again. So your job, as you talked about in your confirmation hearing, is so important that this never happens again. And holding people accountable who are part of this conspiracy is absolutely your job. And I'm also taking, you don't have to comment on this, your unwillingness to answer questions that have come up. I am led to believe, as a former attorney general, that that might mean there's an ongoing investigation. You don't have to talk about it. The statute of limitations may have run on some of this stuff, but not on a conspiracy. And if you're a co-conspirator in mile marker 1, even if you want to get on the exit ramp in mile marker 5, you are liable for the conspiracy in mile marker 10. And we are at mile marker 10. And I will also say what's happening in this country. What's happening with the assault on ICE officers is truly shocking. Deportations are nothing new. Bill Clinton deported 12 million people. 12 million people. You didn't see this. The radicalization that's happened on the left that plays out with political violence is real. And by the way, let me also point out that if we had a scenario where John Thune was on the Supreme Court steps saying, "You've reaped a whirlwind, Supreme Court justices," and then a right-wing assassin tried to kill Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and then a Republican-appointed judge only gave that person 8 years, there would be riots on the streets. Cities would be burning right now. So let's just call it out. We need the cleansing here. Let's just be truthful about what's happening. This left-wing political alliance of violence is not a both sides thing. It's not. And so, Attorney General, I do want to ask you a couple questions about that, because I feel like we have got to get a handle on this. Despite the overwhelming evidence that the political violence threat right now comes primarily from the left, the media just won't do it. They won't go along with it. They cite a few ridiculous studies to say that right-wing political violence is the main problem. For example, one of those studies was written by an Antifa-affiliated professor, and others count classes on prison gang, and the others count classes on prison gang violence as right-wing political violence, but refuse to count anything from the 2020 Summer of Love. Antifa attacks, like the ones that set off the explosive outside Michael Knowles' campus speech. We need good data. We need good data here. Will you commit to having the Department of Justice and the FBI research and release a public report on left-wing political violence?
Yes, Senator Schmidt.
Thank you. I also want to, after Antifa has laid siege on federal buildings and officers in Portland during the 2020 riots, your predecessor, Merrick Garland, dropped virtually all the cases against these defendants. You recently issued a new charging memo instructing federal prosecutors to aggressively pursue Antifa and other radical leftists wreaking havoc on our cities. What can you do to ensure that the various U.S. attorneys' offices follow through on your instructions?
Hopefully we will have our U.S. attorneys confirmed soon. They've been held up. Now our government is in a shutdown, yet our prosecutors are still working. Getting all of our U.S. attorneys confirmed would be a huge step forward, Senator Schmidt. But yes, our attorneys throughout this country will be focusing on that.
And I want to thank you too. So I talked to you during your confirmation hearing and also with Kash Patel of sort of, you've talked about your two pillars, which is to end the weaponization and to get back to actually crime fighting. God bless. Like, that is something that the American people support, despite what you hear from the other side of the dais today. And in those conversations, we talked about you and Kash Patel getting field agents out in the field and doing the work of law enforcement. I said, I've got just the place for you, St. Louis. And St. Louis has now received the largest per capita infusion of permanent FBI agents anywhere in the country, and they're working hand in hand with local law enforcement. That's what happens when you have state leaders work with federal partners to crack down on something I hope we could all agree is a scourge for our communities, which is violent crime. But that is not, you know, J.B. Pritzker, I guess he wants his moment. These Portland people want their moment of defying Trump. It's crazy to me. We should all be unified in this effort of making sure our laws are enforced and taking on violent crime. But I will say, in closing with this, because you referenced the shutdown, it's the same motivation. The same thing that motivates J.B. Pritzker to stand in front of the podium and defy Trump is the same motivation I hear from my Democrat colleagues now in this shutdown. It's not about anything other than the fact, and this is a clean CR. This is what they have lectured us on making sure we do 13 times in the last 4 years. This is about appeasing an increasingly radical base to prove that they're willing to stand up